In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to work with curves using the USCutter edition of VinylMaster CUT. If you'd like to know where to get more advanced tools and features to deal with difficult designs and artwork, please go to the end of this lesson for more details. So to begin with, open up VinylMaster CUT and create a new page like I've done here. Now I'm going to turn the page off by clicking this button and back on just to show you how to do that, just so that we can focus on this object here. So, what are curves? Curves are the paths or the vectors which create a shape based on the position of their nodes. Now, to better explain that, I'll zoom into this logo here. I'm going to put it into wireframe by clicking on this button down the bottom. So go into wireframe, and now we can see the outline or the curves and the lines that form this shape, which form this logo. I'll zoom in a little bit closer. So when I click on this object in object mode, you can see it just selects it as normal. If I go to this tool here, the node edit tool, click on this, and then click on the perimeter of the curve here, it actually shows you these node points. So we've got all different types of nodes here. Now these nodes actually construct the curve. So they've been used to mathematically create the vector path which your blade of your cutter or your pen of your cutter or plotter can follow onto a piece of vinyl or onto some media, whatever it happens to be. Now you can modify and edit these curves simply by moving these nodes around. So if I move this node out like so, you can see it changes the shape quite dramatically. I can undo that to where I was, and now I'll show you how the actual nodes themselves can be modified other than just moving them around. So when a node is selected, you'll see it becomes black like that, and you'll see these blue shaped like arrow tools, and we call these slider nodes, and these are your regular nodes, and the little black light nodes that you see here are just the actual representative of where the nodes actually are until you click on one and it becomes solid and you know that's the current node you've selected. Okay, so if I wanted to adjust the shape of the curve here, I can right click on this node. So if I right click once, you can see it's rather smooth. If I right click on it again, it goes even more smooth, and if I right click on it once more, it actually goes to a sharp corner. So there's 3 right clicks you can do to a node. 1, 2, 3. And that gives you the different shapes. Now the other thing you'll see is these blue sliders, which I mentioned just before, and if you left click on these and drag them, you can see how they change the shape as well. So if I click on that one, this node here, that's its slider there. If I click on this node, that's its slider there. I'll explain those sliders in a moment. Now if I bring these sliders right up to this node here, like so, you'll see that the arrow actually changes, or the slider node changes to this direction. So I'll left click on that, and it actually makes a smooth curve equidistant from the end of this node to wherever the slider points are. So the combination of these slider nodes and positioning nodes and right click, 3 right clicks, means that you can make basically any shape you need to using the node tools. Now it takes a bit of getting used to moving these nodes around and how they work, but once you become accustomed to them, you'll find that you can create just about any shape. Now the other thing you can do is you can double click on a node, and that actually removes it. So when you double click on a node, it actually takes it away. The other thing you can do is you can actually add nodes. So if I wanted to add a node, say in here, I can add a node there, and I can say push it in like that or bring it out, whatever I'm wanting to do, as you can see there. So it gives me quite a bit of control. So you can add and remove nodes by simply double clicking anywhere along the curve. So that explains the general concepts of node editing, and I'll come back and explain more to you during the course of this lesson because there's a few more things to learn yet. The next thing you should be aware of is that you can actually generate curves from scratch. So not only can you just bring them in like this particular logo, but you can actually make curves from nothing. Now to do that, I'll zoom out and we'll just move across here and we'll just work in this area here. So on the left hand side here, you'll see there's these curve tools. Freehand, a create curve, and a create polyline. So the freehand curve is quite simple. It's just basically you left click and you can just move along anywhere you like and it will create the shape that you've basically drawn out. Now if you do it slowly and try and make shapes like this, it'll close them for you. If you make straight lines like this, it'll make like triangle shapes, square shapes, and if you hold it down and go very straight like that, it'll actually just make a line. So that's actually quite a handy way of making or just roughing in shapes. So an example of this would be some text or a logo. I'll just draw something quickly just to give you an idea of what I mean. Just a general idea here. As you can see, as I just draw out the shape, it creates the shape I'm looking for. And at the moment I'm in wireframe mode, so I'll just go into normal view. I'll zoom out a little bit, I'll select all of this and I'll turn the wireframe fill off. Now this is this tool here, it's on an object level. So what this means is that each individual object here is actually in wireframe itself, not just the entire view of the program, but the actual view of the object that's selected here. So if I turn wireframe fill off, you can see, select all of it and turn it all on, sorry. Now, what you'll see here is you don't see the hole here in the D. Now that's because these are separate objects. So when I go back into wireframe mode, this is a solid object and this is a solid object. So when you're in normal view, clearly solid on solid, the whole lot is solid. So to repair that, what you can do, or to deal with that, you can select over the whole object, go over to this tool here and click combine. And when I click combine, you'll see that it turns this into a whole. So the curve shape now is now representing a solid one piece, or one shape I should say. So the object or the shape is now considered to be one whole. So if I like change its size, and I can move it all as an individual piece. Now I can still come in and node edit this, and I'll just use the node edit tools I was showing you before, where I'm basically right clicking to get nice sharp points here, double clicking to get rid of nodes I don't want, like these two in here I might get rid of, etc., to get the sort of effect I'm looking for this particular logo or text in this particular case. And I can double click on these nodes, and if I make a mistake I can quickly click undo, and I can move this in like so. Right click here, double click here, and in a fairly short period of time I've created a particular thing I wanted to make, whatever it happens to be. So that's an example of how you can use the Freehand tool to quickly generate artwork like so, and then you can go ahead and modify it to any degree you want to. So just delete that for a moment, and now we'll keep going on with these tools. So the Create Curve tool's a little bit more structured, in the sense that when I click, it actually continuously adds a curve as I go along, and as you can see I can generate a shape quite simply, and down here I can click close to close this curve like so. So now it becomes a solid shape, and I may continue with the creating some more shapes here. See if you can guess what I'm making. And I'll close that, and I'll also make another shape that looks a bit like this, and we'll close that curve. Now, just with a little bit of node editing, I might come in here, right click on that, double click this, just fiddle around a little bit to get the right look I'm looking for. Move that over there, double click that. And you'll see you also get this crosshair, which means you can actually move the curve as a whole like so. And if I go into object mode, I can actually rotate the curve. And before you know it, a little bit of modifying around, you can generate a shape that might look a little bit familiar now. And if I go into turn that mode off and I make that, say, that color, I make that color, and turn the wireframe fill off, and we might make that like a slightly brown color. If I left click on this here, I can actually change the color like so, and I'm looking for like a brownish sort of color, more like this. Okay, And if you zoom out, then you've got that shape that I've just created, which kind of looks, well, a little bit like an apple, I guess. So that's what you can do with the Create Curve tool there. So we'll delete that one out. The next one is the Polyline Tool. Now an example of that would be something like so. You'll have to forgive my my designing skills here, but this, you get the idea. I can create kind of like a lightning bolt because it makes these nice straight lines, as you can see. And if I, for example, turn wireframe fill off and make it yellow, there I've created my lightning bolt. So one other thing I'd like to mention is that you can actually edit the curve as you create it. Now I'll just go back into the Create Curve tool. I'll just show you what I mean by that. I'll go back to that apple shape I was creating. Now you can see here as I'm creating the curve, it's just putting in the shape as I go. Nothing stops me from coming back here, even right clicking and using the slider nodes to modify the shape as I go. So it gives you a great deal of control, and I can just keep appending to that curve like so. And the other thing I meant to mention was that when you get to a sharp corner like so, you'll see the program automatically makes a sharp corner for you like so. But if I keep going like that, it makes a nice sweeping curve. So it kind of tries to work out what you're trying to do ahead of time. So just bear in mind that as you're actually creating curves, you can come in and modify them as you go. You can even delete the curves and add curves. Delete the nodes and add nodes. So it's a very powerful tool, the Create Curve and Polyline tool, because it allows you to modify as you go. And once you're done, you can either click Done or Close, which will actually close the shape off, as you can see here. The other thing you may want to do is join two shapes together. So for example, if I have this curve and this curve, the question is, how would I join these two shapes together? I mean, if I put them close to each other, sure, they look like they're joined, but the reality is they're still two separate shapes. So the way to do it is you select both shapes by drawing a marquee over them, like so. So I'll just get rid of this for a minute. And this, don't need to confuse the situation, and we'll make that a little bit bigger and zoom in with our scroll wheel mouse. So what we want to do is join this shape to this shape, or this curve to this curve. So we select both curves by using the Shift key and clicking both of them, or drawing a marquee over them so they're both selected. The next thing we do is we go back to this Combine tool here, and we click Combine, and we'll see this is what happens. Now, to overcome that view, what we can do is put it in wireframe view, and now we're only interested in the actual curve shape, not what it looks like when it's closed. Go back into node edit mode, and if I drag that node on top of that node, you'll find it joins, as you can see. And if I bring that over there, and I want to close this off, I can click this button up here, close, and now I've closed that curve. And if I turn the wireframe view off, you can see it's now gone from two separate curves to one single curve by simply combining the two shapes together here and then dragging the nodes on top of each other. You can also break apart a curve. So if I just go back into wireframe mode and I click on break curve, I can go anywhere along the curve here and you'll see the cursor changes like so. And if I click there, you'll see that it now breaks apart like so. And the other tool is reduce nodes. So if I've got lots and so if I go here and just add nodes all over the place that really don't add to the shape at all, and I click reduce nodes, you can see it removes all those unnecessary nodes. So that's another very good tool. And it's quite useful when you bring in some artwork or a logo that someone's given to you as an AI or an EPS or an SVG file or something like that. And there's millions or at least thousands of these nodes all over the place. They don't really add to the shape in any way. You just click the Reduce Nodes button up here, and that will get rid of unwanted or unnecessary nodes. The other thing I'd like to explain to you is fill modes. So at this point in time, this is an open curve, as we can see. However, if I turn the wireframe fill mode off, you can see it looks like it's a solid shape, even though it's an open curve. And that's because the program's being told that this shape has a fill. At this point in time, that fill, I'll just turn wireframe off, that fill is black, and I can make it red or yellow, whatever color I like. but we're saying this shape has a fill, and therefore when you're in solid view mode, this one down here, it's actually showing that fill. So the best thing to do is when you're working with curves like these and you're editing them and you're creating artwork, is to work in wireframe mode, because that will clearly show you when a curve is open. Now if I go back into node edit mode and I click close curve, you can see how it closes the curve. So when I go back out of wireframe view, this is a solid shape now, a solid curve, and whether or not it is open or solid, if you've said it's got a fill, it'll show it with a fill. But if I actually undo that and I turn that off and I go into wireframe mode and I turn the fill off, the object vanishes altogether, because right now you're saying it has no fill, and because the curve itself has no fill, it effectively looks like it's disappeared. So to see that shape now, you could right click to create a pen style like so, and if you turn the pen off by right clicking on that and then giving it a solid fill, you can see how you can now see the shape again. So my recommendation is, when you're working with curves, the safest thing to do is to work in wireframe, and that way you can see whether a curve is open like this or closed like this. That's a way of telling the difference between the two. So let's close out of this now. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was a little bit more about combine and break apart. So if I type in a O shape letter, you can see here that this is actually text. If I go back into text mode, I can type in letters and characters, and that's text. I can't, if I go to node edit mode, I can't node edit this. I can do this sort of node editing, like so, like kerning, but I can't actually node edit the shape because this is actually text. So the program recognizes this as something other than curves. If I want to convert this into curves, that's very easy. Just delete those two characters. So if I want to convert this to curves so that I can node edit it, and once I do that, of course, it'll no longer be text and you won't be able to type onto it anymore, but it'll become a curve shape. I can click on the menu up here, convert to curves, and there's also a shortcut for the keyboard. So if I click convert to curves, this is now a curve shape. So if I go into text mode, it doesn't know anything about it. As far as it's concerned, this is just a regular shape on the screen here. It's not no longer text. And if I go into wireframe mode, you can see that it's just that regular curve shape that we had before. Now at this point in time, this object is combined because when we look in normal view, it shows the whole as a whole. If I click on this flyout and go to break apart, what it's doing here is it's making the centerpiece a solid piece, like you can see. So I go undo, and you can see that that's a solid piece, and when I broke it apart, it was the same color, so that's why you couldn't see the shape inside, because black on black is black. So the situation we have here is we now have two separate shapes, and I can always go back in here and select both of these and go combine, and once again back in wireframe mode, it's a single shape again. So that's how combine and break apart works. Now if I break this apart, I can actually weld this shape to this shape in different ways. So if I say rotate it, I don't know, 90 degrees, and I put it like that, and look in wireframe mode, you can see the shapes overlap each other. If I select a marquee over them and go weld, it looks the same. It's a single as it did before, but if I go into wireframe mode, you can now see it's removed those overlapping sections. So if I go undo, you can see them there. If I select over them, go to here and press weld, it removes the overlapping lines. So that's how welding works, combining and breaking apart. And we'll close that out. And that explains the bulk of the curve and node edit tools in VinylMaster CUT. Now you will see things like this, where someone will send you some artwork and you might vectorize it and end up with a result like this. And it's it's not hard to fix, but it does take time. You can come in here and the first thing you do is reduce nodes, and then you can start deleting nodes, as you can see, and you can add them back and sort of kind of create the shapes you're looking for, and maybe delete a few on the keyboard here or with the keyboard. You know, and you try, and it'll take you some time You can effectively fix this, but as I say, it's time consuming. You don't get a terrific result if it's, you know, quite corrupted artwork. And this is where a high level of the program can actually save you a great deal of time, and it's worth considering upgrading if you do a lot of this type of work. So look, if you're not doing this sort of thing, fine, VinylMaster CUT's more than good enough. However, if you really are doing some more intricate and advanced design work, then you really must consider upgrading to a higher level, which allows you to easily deal with situations like this. So what I'm going to do now is going to close out of VinylMaster CUT, and I'm quickly going to show you a high level of the program just so you can see what I'm talking about. As you can see here, I've loaded up the same artwork, but I've done so in VinylMaster Pro, and you can immediately see all these extra tools and features. And I've actually done it in the demo. I've done that so that you can download the demo for yourself, and you can check out these tools and features and decide whether or not they're right for you. So I select the artwork here. This is the same shape that we had before. I go to Node Edit Mode. You can see there are additional tools and features here. I click on Node Edit Mode, and also in the second row of tools you can see, you know, there's additional tools and features which I can expand out. Now, to correct this shape, this letter A here, before, as you saw in VinylMaster CUT, it was quite complicated, you know, going in and deleting and, you know, changing shapes and all sorts of things. I click on Replace Section here, and I simply just click in a few places along the general shape of this curve, and I can come back and just, you know, edit this ever so finely just to make sure that it's the right shape. I go Apply. You can see how it fixes this up, and I can do the same along here. Click Apply, and you can see how it's immediately changing the shape to be far more accurate in what it's really meant to be. And by being able to adjust this ever so slightly as I need to, or even, you know, quite dramatically if I want to, I can really get the shape I'm looking for in really no time at all. And if I click on, I'll go to Wireframe, and I can actually do that as a solid shape as well. I don't have to be in Wireframe. You can see here how it's gone a bit haywire, but I can adjust that as I go, which is a very powerful tool, this. I click Apply, and, you know, in no time you can correct that artwork, as you can see there. Now I'll show you one more thing quickly, but I'll need to do that in VinylMaster Designer, which is DSR. So I'll just load that up, just give me a moment. So here we are in DSR. Now what you'll find will happen is people will send you artwork, and I've got some examples here. I mean, this one's probably the best one, this SVG file. If I left click and drag it into the software and let go, you can see I've got this artwork which looks quite okay and should cut fine. But if I go into wireframe mode, you'll notice that it's all got overlapping curves everywhere, which makes it very difficult to cut out. If I send that to the cutter, you can see that here, that it's got all these overlapping sections and curves. If I separate it by colour, you can see that you know, there's all these overlapping sections. So this is just not going to work. So in a program like Designer, in VinylMaster Designer or DSR, if you click on the Objects menu, actually before you do that you must ungroup it. So you ungroup the shape, and then you click on the Objects menu and you go down to Welding and Weld Layers. And what you'll notice now in Wireframe is that all the overlapping sections have been dealt with automatically in the software. That would take a lot of time to do that manually. And if I select the artwork and send it to the cutter, you'll see that with the separated by colour, that all the colours have got all the bits and pieces chopped out of them, and there's no overlapping sections anymore, so that when you send this to actually cut, you just load in these different colours and cut them out, and if you use the registration marks as you go, it'll make it very, very easy to lay out the artwork. It'll lay out perfectly, and it'll all be one layer. There won't be colours on top of colours on top of colours. You won't have, you know, yellow on top of black, then blue on top of yellow on top of black, etc. So that's why it's worth considering looking at the higher levels of VinylMaster if you're doing this sort of artwork where you need to deal with these situations, because doing it manually or trying to do it in the basic version VinylMaster CUT, it is quite difficult, it is time consuming, so you are better off considering the upgrade. Now if you want to upgrade, you can do that. I'll just show you on the internet here. You can go to fcl.software s3.com, and if you scroll down here, it will show you can click here to buy the upgrade. You can also learn about why you would upgrade. So if I click on, for example, DSR, which we were just looking at a moment ago, loads it up there, and you can see these are the sorts of reasons. So in addition to Cut, Letter and Pro, so if you have all those versions or Pro, you get all this extra tools and features. Extras as in, you know, fonts and logos and all the rest of it. And if you wish to upgrade, you can click on the buy button here and click upgrade license. This window that opens up, you just type in your product serial number, you follow it through. The good thing about this is once the order is processed, you immediately get back the new PSN and a download link, and you can instantly download and activate the software and start cutting with it, designing and cutting immediately. And you can also do it from the USCutter website, so go to USCutter.com. If you get to the VinylMaster section, that will load up and you will see the upgrade section here. You click on that, and that loads up, and again you click on this and it will take you to the cart. And that concludes this lesson. Thanks for watching.